All right, everyone, welcome. Welcome to the kickoff meeting. I'm going to turn it over to Jeffrey.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're very excited to be able to share this new program that has been designed and by the brilliant Dr. LaKisha David. The main objective today is to talk about the Illinois Family Roots Pilot Program and how it serves as an introduction to a statewide initiative to establish. It was from a statewide initiative that was established through House Resolution 453, sponsored by Illinois State Representative Carol Ammons. This program is designed to support Illinois residents in recovering their African ancestral histories by providing free, and repeat that, free DNA testing and genealogical analysis through the African Kinship Reunion Project. For today, we have a few different things we want to get accomplished, so we'll jump right in. First of all, I just want to welcome everyone and all of our guests. We'll be acknowledging people a little bit. But what we want to do is give an overview of the program and its role in historical recovery and community healing. We also want to provide some insight into the legislative support behind HR 453 and how the state is prioritizing genealogical research and historical justice. We also want to talk about the opportunity to discuss reparations and how this initiative helps document Black Illinois residents' lineages from the present day to the slave era. And then finally, we wanted to have some information about how you may be able to receive a free DNA test. Before we get into that, I want to recognize some of our attendees and key stakeholders. And I do apologize if I get any of the names, pronouncing the names incorrectly. But we have Jaylene Aguirre, who's the lead author of HR 453. We also have Representative Carol Ammons, along with Andrea Porter, her chief of staff. We also have the Conrad Worrill Community Reparations Commission, supporting and gathering community awareness. One of our speakers is the LaKisha Latham, who's the vice president of the organization, and should be sharing later. We also want to acknowledge UIUC's National Center for Supercomputing Applications, Web Design, and the development of the project website. One of the very cool things you're going to hear about today is all the science behind this effort. We also want to acknowledge the UIUC Department of Anthropology and also the UIUC Carl R. Woese Institute for Genomic Biology. I want to talk about the significance of HR 453 for a bit, and just the general importance of family history, legacy, and culture healing through genealogical reconstruction. One of the main things that we want that's important in our lives is our identity, knowing who we are, being able to kind of have a sense of comfort knowing that we have family as well. I think about some of the stories and some of the situations I had with my family over the years and how important that idea and that concept of family is. For example, I have a cousin on my dad's side. My dad has, there's like 10 of them on that side. I have like 40 cousins. And one of these cousins I have, he's rough around the edges. And he's one of those people that, you want him on your side. And as rough around the edges as he is all about family. Don't dare mess with his family. And so you have those kind of folks that no matter how rough around the edges they may be, because they know family is so important, they have your back. I also think about on my mom's side, which has 12 of them all together, so another set of 40 something cousins. And one family reunion, we had this day we were playing basketball. And while our Chicago cousins didn't know New York cousins as much, it didn't matter because we were family. So we were playing basketball against some strangers, and we were able to kind of come together and beat these strangers, and we had that sense of family among one another. And so this idea of family and a sense of togetherness is so vital for our well-being. And so many of us don't know a lot about our family, not going when we start trying to go beyond a couple of generations. I remember sitting down with my mom one time and trying to get as much information from our family history as we could. And we can go back about maybe 3 to 4 generations, and even some of that was a little sketchy. And so this program, as you will see, allows us to really get in tune and touch base with our more extensive family and be able to hit and the legacy of that and the importance of that. And of course, reason why we don't know our history as well as we could is because the history of enslavement of those being kidnapped in our native country, native continent of Africa. It's really important, and I tell people all the time to try to avoid just using the word slave to describe individuals who were kidnapped. These were people, enslaved individuals who had lives, who had function in their community, who were related to different people in the community, and they were kidnapped. They were taken away. They were separated. You imagine today if you just randomly in your neighborhood, in your town, and folk just come up and just start snatching folks. This was a trauma that has yet to be healed, and this program is a lot about trying to heal that trauma. We starting down that path. And so we also want to specifically look at how Illinois has a role that we're playing in pioneering this historical justice initiative and what this means for Black communities. I'll share a little bit later about my role with the state commission, but there's nothing like this in the country. It's really a unique program, unique opportunity for us to really make history in what we're doing today. So I don't want to downplay that at all. And again, finally, before I get into some other discussion, I want to acknowledge our speakers for today. One of our speakers is Representative Carol Ammons, as I mentioned, who was a key champion and pivotal person that got this pilot study approved through the General Assembly. Had a very motivating speech when she got it passed that day. And so you'll hear more from her in a little bit. You got Dr. LaKisha David, again, our brilliant architect behind this program, principal investigator for the African Family Reunion. We also have LaKisha Latham, as I mentioned earlier, from the Conrad Worrill Reparations Commission, who's done some fantastic work in the Chicago area, recently being recognized by Mayor Brandon Johnson for all the work that they've been able to accomplish in getting their Reparations Commission established up there, funded by $500,000 as well. We also have on the line Mackenzie Macon, who's a PhD student. You see in Department of Anthropology. She will be monitoring the Q&A session. On that note, if you have questions, could you direct them at the Q&A section, which you can find in your kind of your more dot 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 box there. You can also put in the chat, but we're going to be primarily trying to put our questions in the Q&A. And then finally, my name is Jeff Trask. I have a couple different roles, but the main thing I do in the reparations world includes the Champaign-Urbana Reparations Coalition, which is a local group that we founded about 2 years ago, that is basically aiming towards trying to get a commission formed for Champaign County for African Americans, and be able to help support that commission to get reparations for African Americans in Champaign County. I'm also part of the African Descent Citizens Reparation Commission. This is a statewide commission that was developed by the governor of Illinois. It's about 17, 18 commissioners that meet monthly. Our objectives include, again, looking at how do we identify harms for African Americans in the state of Illinois, and how do we address those harms that will once we discover those harms. We do have a harms report that's due to be completed by December of this year, 2025, and we also have public hearings throughout the state. We just had one in Evanston, Illinois, this past February. We have 5 others. The next one being in Belleville, on April 26th, and we're going to be hosting our own public hearing in Champaign, Saturday, December 6th of this year. Finally, I have a role with a group called First Repair. First Repair is a national organization that was founded by Robin Ruth Simmons. If those are familiar, Robin Ruth Simmons is the former alderwoman who led the way to get reparations established in the city of Evanston, Illinois, the first and still only city that actually has paid out reparations to individual African Americans in this case, for redlining. Each person who lived in a certain area, Evanston, for a certain time period, receiving $25,000 each. She developed First Repair to help network and coordinate efforts across the country and even internationally for identifying harms again towards African Americans and helping other communities and municipalities form their own commissions to seek reparations for Black folks across the country. For that organization, I'm the Midwest regional leader. We have monthly meetings where we touch base with all our regional areas, which I do want to emphasize to everyone that reparations movement is alive and thriving and well, despite our current conditions in our government. And there are cities all over the country. I meet with people from Detroit, Chicago, Evanston, Kansas City, Wichita, St. Louis, Minnesota, St. Paul, Minnesota. They're all over the place where people are striving towards these efforts. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why those efforts correspond with the things that we're going to talk about today. Um, so kind of talking about the state commission in general, in specific for right now. Um, there's we actually had Dr. David share at the African Descent Citizen Reparations Commission recently. The commission is very interested in the implications of what this program can mean for African Americans in the state of Illinois. Um, we have ultimately going to be coming up with recommendations to address these harms, and to a large degree, some issues of eligibility have implications when it comes to this particular program. And so that's going to be a factor. And on a broader scale, you think about all the different ways that this can apply to people and can be important to people. And I'll just give you a personal example. My wife's family found out about a decade ago that they had owned land in Mississippi, and that land in Mississippi had been owned by this patriarch of the family. And over the years, due to terrorism and everything else, most of the family had migrated up north. And while there was a couple of people that kind of hung around and was able to take advantage of the proceeds, for the most part, white individuals were able to take the land, take things over, even killing the patriarch, as his death certificate said he died from a broken arm, and a broken face. And so being able to connect the dots when it comes to who's related to this patriarch who owned this land in Mississippi, and so who is eligible to receive the proceeds of an oil field that had been functioning from the 1920s to 1980s. And so these kind of examples is this all around the country of those who have been disenfranchised, who've been discriminated against, who have suffered from systematic and structural racism, who've been driven off their land. And in many cases, we want to know who is tied to who. And because I can tell you from first direct experience, we went to Mississippi several times to do background and history and dig up records and so on and so forth. And in Mississippi in particular, a lot of things are not there. And so having a program like this where you can trace DNA and trace genealogy through something like this, it could be vital for these types of situations. And so again, and that's just one of countless examples of how this could be relevant for people across the country. And so I just want to share those kind of things before we get into it. I hope that you will learn a lot. And real quickly, I do want to mention a bit about the international implications as well, because family wasn't just one way in terms of the separation. There were those who were in Africa who lost their family as well as as those who were kidnapped. I watched a film that we'll mention later today that had Africans and African Americans kind of sit down with one another and kind of talk about some of the things that are issues between those who have been kidnapped and those who stayed. And I tell you, both groups suffered tremendously, but we don't know each other's stories very much. And so being able to connect with each other through this DNA testing can be vital to be able to come to a better understanding and remember that their family, as much as the family here, they're family, they're our family. And so when we can get that part figured out and start working together, as opposed to being opposed to each other in different ways, is going to be vital for our future. And again, other places that suffer, you think about the idea of kidnapping a whole bunch of people from a community. That community that's left behind suffers in many different ways. They may have lost their community leaders. They may have lost their people who are the healers and so on and so forth. So you can imagine the damage that did for those who weren't kidnapped as well. And so that's a big part of it is reconnecting with our African roots and what the meaning of that is, not just in terms of the history, but also the current implications of that as well. We want to be able to get to a point where, like my cousin Hank, we can have our cousin in Ghana, or our cousin in Nigeria, and our cousin in Ethiopia, and be able to reconnect with our family there. So with all that said, I'd like to pass the baton over to our next speaker, Representative Carol Ammons of the 103rd District there. She, again, is our champion and sponsored this pilot project, and I'll let her talk about more of the program goals and timeline.
Thank you, Dr. Trask, and thank you all for being here. This is an exciting moment for all of us, and certainly for Black Illinois, and hopefully for Black Nation, right? Before I actually do what Dr. Trask has asked me to do, I would like to do something and yield, if it's okay with Dr. Trask, a few minutes to our great clerk, Mr. Aaron Ammons, who has a personal story that really connects all of this and grounds this work, that I'd like for him to take a few minutes, if it's okay with you, to share with the listeners of the audience. And I'm going to shift over so he can do that.
Okay. I don't know if I'm on camera, but you can hear me, right? Grand Rising, everyone. My name is Aaron Ammons. I am the Champaign County Clerk and Recorder, and I'm better known as Carol's husband. I want to just quickly share that my family and myself in particular, after sort of following the lead of my sister, LaKisha, who had been doing a lot of this work with DNA and submitted her DNA samples to ancestry.com. So I began to work on that as well. And I submitted, Carol and I submitted our DNA. And a lot of people started to show up in ancestry.com as potential relatives, but I didn't understand the science of it. So when Rep. Ammons and Dr. David were connected and began to learn, and we began to learn about the science of DNA and how it worked, then I had access to Dr. David. So my desire was increasing to find out who these people were and to make the connections. So one person showed up on my list with a very high CM, but I didn't know what CM stood for or any of those things. So I reached out to Dr. David, and she began to educate me about what centimorgans meant in this process. And she said the higher the centimorgans, the closer the relationship is. So when I began to share with her that there was someone showing up with 1,634 centimorgans, she said, Brother Aaron, that person is either your auntie, your sister, or some very close relationship to you. So that spurred me to reach out to this person more and to really push the issue. And we began to talk a lot more. And she was looking for this person. Turns out her name is Sheila. She had been questioning to some degree her biological history. And so she thought that her dad was still out there somewhere, is what she thought when she expressed, when we talked about it. So we kind of felt like we exchanged pictures, and I was like, this person has to be related to me. But it was Dr. David's information that made me stand strong with my family and to educate them about how centimorgans work and how the science of this DNA works. So my sister, who she turns out to be my sister, Sheila, put her DNA into another group where my dad's DNA had already been, because he had already submitted as well. And some of my other siblings, two of my other sisters were there. So Sheila put her information in and her DNA into the other program. I think it was Heritage or African, and I can't remember which one it was. And she called me in the middle of the night, excited and screaming because the report came back that my dad, Jerry Ammons, was 100% her father. And she was, at that point, I'm getting chills just thinking about it. She was 59 years old. So for 59 years, I just turned 54 in February 7th. And for 59 years, I did not know, or for 54 years, right? But I did not know I had a sister right in Arkansas, just a few hundred miles away. And eventually, my dad, who was a little skeptical about it at first, didn't really understand. And I was explaining to him the centimorgans and the closeness. And then once she did the other DNA test, everything started to come together. I mean, her and my little sister, Deanna, are spitting images of one another. If you see a picture, you would probably get them confused. They look so much alike. But long story short now, we went to, Carol and I, Rep. Ammons and I went down to Arkansas to meet my sister Sheila for the first time, discovered my nephews, my great nephews, my brother-in-law, and many things about her life, all the similarities. When I walked in, she had on some black Air Max, and so did I. Right? So down to the shoes, we were thinking alike. Many things. She had traveled to Africa, very pro-Black, and her stance is very similar to how I operate. So this was just a momentous and a monumental time for us. And she eventually caught a plane, her and my brother-in-law, and came to Champaign and came down to escalator at Willard Airport and saw her daddy for the first time in her life. So this has been tremendous for us, and it is deeply moving to me. And she has been embraced by the family. We all are just thrilled to have this process. So I want to, in front of all of you, thank Dr. David for her commitment, for her clarity, her communication, and for everything that it has meant for my family. So thank you all for listening. I just wanted to give you an example of how this stuff can work. And I want to say, with Dr. David on the line, you have to manage your expectations, as she would say, because everything's not going to go as wonderful maybe as it did for my family. But there will be other greater stories told and wonderful stories and connections made. So I thank you all for this work, and thank you for allowing me to share.
It really chokes me up as I'm a witness to not only the separation that has happened to us as African people through the great tragedy of the transatlantic slave trade, but also to our sojourn here in America, where we, by decisions of this government and history, have lost our connections to our families, our mothers, our grandmothers, our brothers and sisters, who, by that loss, we have not been able to sustain ourselves as a family. This project, its origin simply comes out of a desire to know and to correct. I was just sharing with Brother Aaron that the first time I came across something called the UN Declaration of Human Rights was through a Caucasian professor here at the University of Illinois named Dr. Belden Fields, who has since transitioned in the last year. And he and I remained friends for over 20 years. What he taught me, though, is beginning to manifest right now. I didn't know at the time that the work that he had authored, titled The Universal Rethinking the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in the 21st Century, I had never heard of that. I had never gone to read the declaration until after his work and listening to him right here in this little town in Champaign. Dr. Belden Fields told me at the time that the declaration was designed to restore the people who were injured and harmed by way of the violations of their human rights. But I didn't center my Black experience in that declaration. And it would take another almost 20 years before that declaration became a real thing for me and for me to initiate the work that we have initiated through House Resolution 453. That resolution is designed specifically to call out a decision that was made upon Black people when they were brought here, illegally trafficked across the Atlantic to the Western Hemisphere by a foreign government to be enslaved for the purpose of developing economic sustainability for that population in violation of their human rights. And because that is a fact, we now, as legislative members, must take the power that we have to right a wrong that was done by legislation, to effectively produce the remedies, the recourse, the redress, and other measures that are due to us as a people, not as an individual necessarily, for a national, regional, and international recompense. The framework that the declaration does many years later now that we produce in House Resolution 453, and let me back up and thank my fellow, Ms. Jaylene, who's on this call, who came to my office by way of her own accord and decided to give a year of work to this effort. And I said to Jaylene, I need someone who specializes in genetics, because the Black Caucus is going to take a trip to Africa for the first time in over probably 2 decades that the Black Caucus had done that. And we're going to go back to Ghana, and we're going to retrace our steps and return. And Jaylene said, I think I know someone. And that someone she reached out to. And through Jaylene, I was reconnected to someone I already knew. I didn't know that the person I knew was the specialist, the brilliant leader in Dr. David that is doing this genetic work. So I said, Jaylene, hey, connect us. We have a meeting. It wasn't very long. And Dr. David, who I didn't recognize, but recognized, said, you know who I am, Sister Carol. See, only people who know the work that we do can call me Sister Carol because they know the work that we do. And I said, oh, I know her. And then she said, well, let me remind you of who and how we are connected. She connected me back through another friend when she was already here at the University of Illinois, went to finish the PhD in anthropology, and came back at the right time. We could not have orchestrated this. This is being orchestrated by our ancestors, but we don't know this. So at the moment Dr. David comes on board, Dr. David says, here's what I do. And I said, here's what I need. I need the people of Illinois to not have to do what I just did in order to find out where I come from and who I am. To go back to Africa, I need this DNA test done. So I paid for it 2 times. And I said, the people should not have to do this. The government separated us from who we are, what ethnicity we come from, what people, what country, what nation we belong to. And they should pay for our discovery. So we wrote House Resolution 453 to call on Illinois to make a path for the people who identify themselves as descendants of the enslaved in America, those who were trafficked illegally, should have the right of discovery. And through that work, we have gotten to this point that we now can reconnect, who I know in Cobra has been working on this for 40 or 50 years. I know that. Now we get to connect all the dots for the people of Illinois who want to discover not just who they are, but remember, we are a connected people. That means that I have living relatives somewhere, like Aaron just told you, in Nigeria, in the Benin Kingdom, among the Asan people who I have identified myself as a descendant of those people. And I have the right to return to the land for which my people were illegally trafficked from. This path is not necessarily for us to say, see, I told you you owe us reparations. Yes and no. The most important thing for me in this project is to discover the living relatives who lost contact with me because my ancestor was stolen and taken away and they never found out what happened to them. I am the descendant of those people, and only I can reconnect them back to their full lineage. And so today we are discovering the genealogy, utilizing the scientific research and the investment dollars that we've already put on the table by way of tax dollars that go to my university, that funds the Center for Genomic Biology, that funds the Department of Anthropology, that allows Dr. David to be here to do the work that she is doing for the rediscovery of African people in the West. I know that's a lot, but that is what the call is for us today, for us to rediscover, to reconnect, and to utilize the systems that we pay for to answer the most fundamental question that I believe every human being has asked themselves: who am I? I will close with this, because this is only the beginning. The way that we are experiencing the world at this moment, the feeling of loss, this being cut, that being cut, losing this job, losing that, I believe, and I will testify 100%, that the only way to heal the hurt of African American people and African people in totality is for discovery to take place, for truth to be known, and for us to reconnect to our actual ethnic culture and identity. and become an African people, however you want to express that. So today we are launching this amazing project that I didn't see 10 years ago. I did not even know that this was even possible. I didn't realize that the legislative power sat with me the whole time, that I could fix this. And that's what we have embarked upon doing. I do hope that people who have joined this call will tell other people that you are also welcome to discovery, because along this path, I also sit and I am discovering for the first time my paternal side of my family. Because remember, we were separated. My grandmother, I didn't know anybody beyond my maternal grandmother. No one beyond my maternal grandmother. I didn't know my paternal side of the family, my paternal grandmother. The other 50% of me is unknown until Dr. David came along to clarify the point. And so we are here saying as testimony, in the way that we do in the traditional church, that I just simply need to testify that God is good and the universe will correct the harm and the wrong that has been done to African people. Thank you all so much. Dr. David, we are indebted to you and to your entire team. And we are thankful that you have decided to use your scholarship to heal humanity. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Trask. I'll leave there.
How do you respond?
I just want to say, as Dr. David prepares to share, thank you both, Representative Kara Ammons, and I'm kind of a little touched up here. I'm sure as many of you might be as well. Both Rep. Ammons and Aaron, Champaign County Clerk Aaron Ammons, are fantastic people, and just hearing them speak just really encapsulates the importance of this and why this is so vital and meaningful. And they just are awesome people, and it could have been said better. With that in mind, we're going to move along, and we're going to have Dr. David share about this program she brilliantly put together and was the architect of.
Thank you, Dr. Trask. Well, I really don't know how to even start the response to such moving testimonies that we just heard. But I know that, this is personal for me too. And, there's a part of knowing that isn't, can't really be communicated with words, but, that I don't know if you want to call it spirit, the soul. But I hear you with a tear up, in my soul. And thank you for sharing. And it is my pleasure, but also just a core of who I am to be doing this work in this time. So at this point I will turn to talk a little bit of the details of the program itself. Here, Illinois Family Roots Genealogy Pilot Program, talk about the program status. So if you've had a chance to look at the text of the HR 453, you'll see the principal investigator is listed as LaKisha David, that is me. And this is the project, the African Kinship Reunion. You can go to this URL, the website is live now. So we'll continue on. All right, so in this session, Jeff, I'm assuming you'll let me know if my slides are not advancing.
Okay, you're good.
Okay, so the purpose of this session is I will provide an overview of the program and clarify who can participate and how the program ensures inclusivity. I'll give a little bit of detail, just a little bit about the DNA itself, and then provide the program milestones. So as you've heard, the Illinois 103rd General Assembly House Resolution 453. So if you're looking up, if you're doing a Google search for it, that's what, you should search for that. It is a groundbreaking groundbreaking policy supporting DNA testing for Illinois residents to help trace African ancestry, sponsored by Illinois State Representative Carol Emmons, who you just heard from. And as she said, it's an initiative that ensures that African American families can rebuild their genealogies with both academic and policy support. So this is when you do the search, this is how you will find the text. So I will read the short summary of it here. Urges support for the Family Roots Genealogy Pilot Program as it provides African American descendants of enslaved individuals the opportunity to trace their roots back to their ancestral homelands, to reconnect with their ancestral heritage, and to promote their well-being. This is history. This is our futures, right, in this policy. And so we do have a champion in Representative Carol Emmons, who sponsored this House resolution, and you can see the history of this there. So what is the program? As we mentioned, it does support genealogical reconstruction and this recovery, helps descendants of enslaved individuals recover their African ancestral histories. It is providing free DNA testing for people who live in the state of Illinois, and those will be participants in the project, the African Kinship Reunion, that you can learn more about through that URL. So one of the goals is to test 1,500 people by May. So it is a pilot program. So that is the number that we have so far. All right, and here is State Rep Emmons in the office of the Department of Anthropology at UIUC. And it just so happened that at that moment, my saliva samples from Ghana, 48 samples that we collected in Ghana, my team collected, Mackenzie and I, as well as John is on this call. We collected these samples in Ghana, and then they arrived at the office. And so here is just a dedication of Rep Emmons to, in the whole process here. So who can participate? Must live in the state, Illinois, be 18 years of age or older, have an ID, be able to connect to the website. And there's the website there. There is no cost for you to participate. There is one exception to participating, and that is anyone living in any state can upload existing results from 23andMe and Ancestry. That feature and some of the other features that I'll mention will be online by the end of this month. And then the other ones will be by June of this year. So to receive the free kits, must be a resident of Illinois, but to participate, in other words, to get some of these results, if you already have results from another company, you will be able to upload it and receive some of the same benefits here. One of the main things that I want to respond to, and there's a lot of words in this text, in this slide, but one of the top questions, other than how can I participate, is what's happening with my data. And so I do want to take a moment to talk about that. So protecting participant data, participant being the person who take the DNA test, that is our top priority. Other than providing the service, this is our top priority. And so we making sure that we are in compliance with industry-leading security and privacy frameworks. This ensures ethical and responsible data handling. So many of you are familiar with HIPAA guidelines, protecting your personal information, health-related data. So it ensures privacy and security. So that we're making sure that we're following those guidelines. We're also going beyond that in terms of the genetic data, and even including that as personal identifiable data. That actually goes beyond the HIPAA and the GENO laws with DNA. But then there's also other standards here listed as conformance packs that is about data security control, cybersecurity, and things like that. So those are definitely in place and will be listed on the website too. So following AWS, which is the web services, following security best practices. That is an absolute must and something we're taking very seriously. So beyond just knowing what the standards are, we also have established ways to monitor it, to make sure that that is what we're actually doing. So there is a centralized security dashboard. From that, we will, on the back end, on those who are managing the systems will be able to, in real time, see the status of our, the security and things like that. But that means also that we'll be able to report in real time the scores meeting those various standards on the website. So you'll see exactly how well we're meeting the standards in any moment in time. These systems also have auditing in place. So it is constantly looking for suspicious activity, any system vulnerabilities, making sure that any sensitive data is being protected. So that's real-time protection against security threats, rapid response to potential risk, and making sure that there is a safe and private computing and web environment as much as we can possibly do. But there is this third level of it here is just us as the researchers. What are we doing with the data? And so for that, I want to share our commitment to the ethical data use. Your DNA is for genealogy only, and it's not for any other purpose. If you go and you Google my name, the names of Mackenzie, our work is for genealogical purposes only. That's it. Your data is never sold. It's never used for purposes outside of family history reconstruction. As a matter of fact, that is even in the wording of the House resolution. That is just for genealogical purposes. We do not participate in DNA medical research. That being said, the data is yours. So you will have a feature on the website to download your DNA profile, and you yourself can share it with anyone that you would like. So if you want to participate in medical research, you'll have the DNA profile, so maybe that you take the test with us. Same thing for law enforcement. We do not participate. We did not use the participant data DNA for law enforcement. If you want to download your profile and upload it to other databases like GEDmatch, for instance, to support it, that is your decision. It is your data, but we are not doing that voluntarily. There may be cases where, if we get subpoenaed or things like that, in those, I'm assuming, rare moments, it is backed by the university lawyers. So it would have to be a really, ironclad, legitimate warrant. But other than that, we don't voluntarily engage in that type of work. Your DNA belongs to you. You decide how it's used through a consenting process. There are opportunities to engage in other genealogical research. But it is up to you. And I could talk about more of that in the Q&A section, but I do just really want to make this part of it clear. So who are we? Who are we to that's making this commitment? And here are the pictures of the team leads. So this is me here, LaKisha David. I am in the Department of Anthropology at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. The BAG lab, that's the Loved African Genetic Genealogy Lab. So I'm based here in the US, but I also have a collaborator in Ghana. This is Dr. Rachel Mills. Apologies for not putting the titles on the other two here. She is a principal investigator in Ghana. So my counterpart in Ghana, University of Cape Coast. And then we have Dr. Carter Clinton. He is at the North Carolina State University, specializing in burial. So looking at former plantations and finding our ancestors who may have been buried there, maybe in unmarked graves there. So being able to get the DNA from the souls that our ancestors were buried in various plantations and putting them in our database to help identify them. So that is another part of the overall TAKIR work that benefits this House Resolution program. Expanding it further with me is Mackenzie Macon. You've been introduced to a moment ago. She's a PhD student in the Department of Anthropology, specializing in this work. And then on the Ghana side, we have Prince Sidem Samantia, who is a research assistant with Dr. Mills. Sidem will be joining us in the Department of Anthropology at UIUC this fall. So you'll actually be seeing him around. So that's there. And then we have our awesome community team that we can't do this work without. So we have Gabriel, who is in Ghana. He's been with the TAKIR project since 2018, since it started. And one of my first graduate advisors on the line, Christy Harris, and we were all together in the beginning. And it is so awesome that both, Christy is on the line now, as well as Gabriel is still a part of the project now. So if that speaks to, just the relationship building part of it. And then we have John Peter Brown's on the line here too. He's a community member from Ghana. He's collected about 2,000, I want to say, oral histories in Elmina and Cape Coast with Family Search, Houses Block here. Also helping us to be able to reach community members to test. So these samples from their work is in the database, and that is how we're able to identify living relatives that I'll speak a little bit more in a moment. And then we have our community collaborators here in the US, LaKisha Latham, you'll hear from a little bit later, Conrad, Worrill, CWCRC, actually I shouldn't have done it. She will tell you exactly what this stands for. I am so sorry, I just blanked on the actual titles there. Community Reparations Coalition. And so, so she has been there giving testimonies when the call went out at HR 453 at the Capitol in Springfield, and just trying to really raise awareness in the communities here. And you'll probably see her out and about in the elderly homes collecting saliva for this project. So, so how do you get your DNA kit, right? That's what we want to know about. So, for now, join the wait list is at the bottom of the main page there. Here's the URL. We are expected to begin testing later this month. When it's opened up, you'll create an account on the website and then consent to testing. There's several pages of consent there. We're really trying to explain, the project, any types of risk, benefits, things like that, questions you might ask and want to know about the project before you, contribute your saliva and DNA to the project. Also give you an opportunity to ask questions about the project too there. But then take the DNA test that we provide. There's a couple of opportunities. One, and this is the one that we prefer, to attend DNA testing events. And to get a list of those, you'll see them popping up on the events page on the website and probably through Eventbrite. So keep an eye out for new events that pops up there. But if you're not able to make one of the events, you can request to have a DNA kit mailed through the website once we open up, and then Mackenzie will take care of mailing a kit to you for you to then provide the saliva and mail it back to us, prepaid postage, and then we can process it. And again, here too, if you've already tested with other companies, you can go ahead and upload that to the website. You can get some early results until the new results come in. And in a moment, I will explain why that matters. and then review your results, just like you would at 23andMe or Ancestry. Let's say Ancestry for now, I'm not sure. Well, Ancestry. You will be able to go online, review your results at any time, and share your stories with us. That's the hope. That's the hope. Do advocate for policies to expand this program. So as we mentioned before, this is a pilot program. So we have a limited number of kids right now, but as Representative Carol Ammons sort of alluded to a little bit, there are future plans to expand this statewide. And I know that she's already talking about it going nationwide. So, but we need your help on that. So do advocate for that. Then folks like Jeffrey can, Dr. Trask here, can give you more information about how to do that. So here is the website, the URL. When you land, it should look something like this here. This is an example. Once the results come in, you'll see a display something like this when you log into your account. Seeing the family trees and things like that. Not expecting you to really totally read it right now, but just to let you know what's in store. And then various types of events or results. Learning about your relatedness to Africans in our reference panel, estimating the time that your ancestor lived, somewhere between the last 4 and 20 generations. And the main part, one of the main features is that we will use your DNA to automate the tree building process. That takes so much time. If you've already, have started your genealogy search, you can attest that it takes a lot of time and there are lots of brick walls. But if you do the DNA test, we can help you. We can cut out many of those hours. It will automate that process. And then you'll just, can go from there in terms of the other genealogy work that you're doing. One thing about the project, though, is that we will focus on those African diaspora relatives. But I can already hear the moving towards repairing even more local histories and more recent histories, too, in the U.S. So this is an example of a single, like a match page. So like you and your relative, this one is what that would look like. And for some, you will also find living relatives. As I mentioned before, we are sampling and we're trying to increase our, the number of people from the continent, on the continent testing, our recent immigrants testing. So that's also something that's happening that is will benefit the program. In this case here, this is one of those connections. The lady that you see here, she's Ghanaian, and she was in the US, and the male here is African American, and they did the DNA test, found out they were related to each other, and then they met, I believe, in California, I want to say. And then you see their expression. So this is, I want to say the end goal. Then it becomes a beginning goal, because then what's the futures with, these happening at the family scale and the community scale. I do want to take a moment to talk about African ancestry, especially if you're considering how, you might use this in other states and why we're using the route that we're using versus African ancestry. We know African ancestry has been really successful in getting their name out there and promoting their brand. Many people have found some information about their family history through their work, but they will even say that their testing is Y DNA testing, the Y chromosome, and the mitochondrial DNA. So I just want to give you a visual of what that is in a moment. So African ancestry here is on the right. Here again, the Y chromosome, mitochondrial DNA is about 1% of your DNA. And so that is an actual quote from Rick Kittles, the geneticist for African ancestry. But in a moment, you'll see that for yourself. But also the time frame is about 500 to 2,000 years ago. That is the nature of Y DNA and mitochondrial DNA. But you'll also see that on the African Ancestry database or website there, that time frame. So if we're looking at recovery of an actual harm, the crimes that was committed against humanity, we really want to focus on the time frame of 0 to 500 years ago. And that is what we're able to do when we look at more of the DNA. So companies like 23andMe, Ancestry, and Takir were using the autosomal DNA, the 1 to 22 chromosomes. So not only does it represent more ancestors, much more of the genome, but it's also in a more relevant time period. And we're able to identify living relatives, including African relatives. And we're able to use that to automate the tree building process. So whereas African Ancestry is a tool for, what it is, designed for, these are the additional benefits to using Takir.org and these autosomal testing that we're offering through this program, through this Illinois Family Roots program. So this is a visual here. If you look at this as a family tree, at the bottom here, you have siblings, you have a brother and a sister here. And then each row up, that's their parents, father and mother. And then each row up are their parents and so forth. So if you look at the blue here, that is showing the inheritance or how the Y chromosome gets passed down from father to the son to the brother. And I'm using these terms in terms of genetic chromosome X and Y. So for someone who have an XY, it is the brother here is inherited from the father, right? The mitochondrial is a little bit different. This is passed down from the mother to all of her children, male or female, or, all of the above. It is passed down from the mother to all children. And so that's why at the bottom here, brother have a little bit of the red. It's not that you have a little bit of the mitochondrial, it's just representing that not only did he have the Y from the father, but also the mitochondrial from the mother, whereas sister here only will have the mitochondrial from the mother. But what I want to really point out here is that you're only looking at these two lineages. You're looking at the Y and you're looking at the mitochondrial. That is why it said that it's only represented about 1% of the DNA. If that's all we have, that is a lot, right? And I understand that. But if you look at the top row, there are so many more of the stories of our ancestors that we're just missing. It's just not in that DNA. And we have to get the chromosomes 1 to 22 to represent more of those ancestors and to be able to tell their stories as well. So that is what our focus is. And so this one tries to illustrate that. So if you think again of a family tree, that's you in the middle, and then your parents here at the next row, father, mother, and then in the next row are their parents, and so forth and so on. So this is representing receiving that information, that DNA from all of your ancestors, from you, from your father and mother, from your grandparents and great-grandparents. If it's colored in the blue, so like 1, 2, 3, 4 generations out, you will receive DNA from all of your ancestors 4 generations out. But the more that you go out, you'll see that there are some ancestors that just won't make it, their DNA just won't make it to your genome. That's just the nature of the space that we have on our DNA. The more that we go out, the more, chances that there are some ancestors that we did not inherit actual, detectable DNA from. But we have so many 3rd, 4th, 5th cousins that if we test more folks, then, chances are one of them will have picked up the pieces that you did not pick up. So even with that, there is still so much more of the history that we can pick up from doing the autosomal DNA testing. And if you weren't aware, the time frame that we're really looking at is 6 to 20 generations ago. But for an elderly person, we're looking at 4 to 18 generations ago, where our ancestors come in. So this is just that information for you again. And then with Takir, again, we're automating the tree building process up to 20 generations, prioritizing those genealogical connections and working to identify living African relatives, as well as helping folks to understand more about their African heritage. So here, in wrapping it up, want to wrap up with the milestones. The Illinois 103rd General Assembly, H.R. 453, was adopted by our House of Representatives on April 10th, 2024. We did receive state appropriations of $500,000. That was in the state budget there, and it was written to the IGB, Institute for Genomic Biology, and that was for the African Kinship Reunion. Takir, that's the African Kinship Reunion. We received our anticipation account notice in February. And then, so now we are expecting to begin testing this month. You will see those events. Dr. Trask will name some of them. And then we are hoping to finish testing by May, but we need your help to make this happen. Be on the lookout for those DNA events. Bombard us with the emails. Let's make sure that you get tested and all your friends. And at the end of the day, just do join the waitlist today. And thank you. Dr. Trask.
Thank you so much, Dr. David. As you can see, this is an amazing program. I've heard Dr. David share the background and the trees and everything, and this, to me, is so clear how all this works. She's taken trust me, and I've heard the other backstory too. She's taken a very complicated subject matter and broke it down in a very understandable way, and I appreciate Dr. David for doing that for us. And so we want to keep things moving. We're going to, again, just a reminder, please put questions in the Q&A section or the chat, preferably the Q&A section. We will address questions at the end here. And before we get to the next speaker I want to present is LaKisha Latham. LaKisha Latham is the Vice President for the Worrill Community Reparations Commission. And it was a little funny story. A couple of years ago, I went to the National Symposium for State and Local Reparation Leaders in Evanston, hosted by First Repair and Robin Ruth Simmons, and just so happened to run across LaKisha Latham there, who happened to be an old high school buddy going way back. I won't say how far back because I won't want to go there, but we go back to our high school days at Homewood Flossmoor, and we didn't know either one of us were doing reparations work, and so we made that reconnected there. It was a wonderful experience, and things have been moving with her and Dr. David ever since. And so at this time, I'd like to present LaKisha Latham, and she can share reparations and the role of family histories.
Thank you, Dr. Trask. Thank you, Dr. David, State Rep Carol Ammons, for the amazing work you do. I just want to acknowledge the ancestors. I stand on the shoulders of many that have gone before us as we talk about reparations. Robin Ruth Simmons, who's amazing in Evanston, Cam Howard, in Cobra, other organizations. So I'm really grateful to be here. State Rep had me crying earlier. I had to, kind of hold back the tears. So I'm still kind of feeling that. This is a very emotional topic of lineage and just discovering who we are and who we're related to in the current day is amazing. So with that, I'll just get right on into it. So today I'm going to be talking about reparations and the role of, family histories. So to first do that, you have to understand two things. I'd like you to know that reparations is not new. Several ethnicities have received reparations over the years, including, the Japanese, et cetera. And then I also want you to understand that reparations to the descendants of enslaved Africans is not a handout, it's a debt owed. So those are two things that you should understand. And the reparations push, it's not just for us, but it's also for healing. And State Rep, I think she articulated it very well. It's a holistic approach. It's totality in healing, and it's not just for the victims, but it's for everyone. So we're in a very sensitive space and time, but it is happening. Reparations is happening. It's continuing nationally. And Illinois is a great place to observe as we watch reparations and the movement with legislation and the political will in Illinois. So I'm grateful. So what are the 5 components of reparation by the UN? So we've got restitution, which aims to restore the victim to their original situation before the violations occurred. There's compensation, which provides financial compensation for economical accessible damages, proportionate to the gravity, hopefully, of the violations. Rehabilitation, which includes like medical, psychological, legal, and social services to address the needs of the victims. And then there's satisfaction, which addresses moral damages through measures such as public apologies and truth seeking. And then the last component is cessation, which is the guarantee of non-repetition, which is to prevent further abuses of those that are or have been victimized. So the Family Roots Genealogy program in Illinois primarily addresses 2 of the 5 components for reparations, and those are rehabilitation. This program provides psychological and social services by helping African American descendants of enslaved individuals reconnect with their ancestral heritage. Self-identification is key with this. Family. Our people are people that come from love, community, and so to be able to connect with our family members, not only here in the United States, but in Africa, is going to be an amazing thing for all of us. And that component of emotional healing, it promotes well-being and restores a sense of identity, culture, etc. So, I just say it's a phenomenal time, and the work that Dr. David does is amazing, and this program is, to me, amazing. The other component that it covers is satisfaction. The program aligns with the satisfaction component because it engages in truth seeking. It provides African Americans with information about their ancestral heritage, right? Their history, the origin. It allows us to identify in real time today where potential family members that exist are in Africa. So to be able to dialogue and to know, like, hey, I don't just have family members here in the United States, but I got a cousin over in, West Africa or wherever it may be. I'm excited to hopefully test personally at my own expense. So to find out who I am. And I always joke with Dr. David about finding out that I'm some sort of African princess or, or something like that. But, I would just be honored because I'm a family-based person to know any family members that I have that are out there and to have them be received and to be received by them. It is very touching. It is very touching. So satisfaction, like I was saying, provides that element of truth seeking and ancestral origin. While the program also, has been dedicated $500,000, it doesn't directly provide monetary compensation or restitution, but it does offer a form of non-monetary reparations because it provides the free DNA test and the analysis, which will help us trace back to our ancestral roots, right? So HR 453 is a meaningful effort to acknowledge and potentially address historical harms of slavery and enslavement, and the human trafficking errors. So now, why does lineage documentation matter? Lineage-based approach ensures reparation kind of targets those directly impacted by slavery's legacy. It addresses a specific debt owed to the descendants of enslaved Americans. It recognizes the unique historic injustice and ongoing efforts or effects of chattel slavery. So I don't know if people are aware, but there were 12.8 million Africans that were mass trafficked across the Atlantic about 400 years ago. And although that number was 2.8, only 10.7 million actually survived the journeys. So with slavery systematically fracturing African families and pulling us apart here in America through slave trades, it becomes important to trace back our lineage so that we can document exactly who was affected or brought here, your families, as we talk about, reparations and the repair for it. Now, lineage-based pre-1870s, the census records didn't often allow African Americans to trace back our roots. So this DNA, the genetic DNA testing, kind of fills a lot of voids in that process for the descendants of enslaved Africans. Now, the Illinois Family Roots Pilot Program helps document family histories. It provides DNA testing and the analysis, but it also, through Dr. David's utilization of cutting-edge genetic genealogy, it allows us to reconstruct our narratives, right? I was impressed by the slide that showed the autosomal DNA analysis that she will be using. It's really fascinating to know that at a particular point in our lives, we would have to manually trace back our histories, and we would have to search through not just the census, but we would also have to try to locate our family members through insurance documents because we were considered property back then, or wills most of the time from the slave masters and their families. So it was often hard for us to figure out where we came from. And then with slave trades, where our family members went to across the United States, or, so it's this lineage-based kind of approach helps break down barriers for providing documentation, because once we have these records, we'll be able to keep them, present them, be able to have them as supporting documentation for our families, but also for possibly reparation-based programs, et cetera, if they are needed or necessary at the particular time. So some of the benefits, that I talked about earlier and that you've been hearing through this contributes to the cultural healing, restoration of lost connections of our family members, healthy identity. It's empowering. That's another benefit that I find, that the more I hear us talk about it in this meeting, it's empowering, it's emotional, it's it provides closure to the descendants that are seeking to understand their heritage. So I'm really proud that we are able to provide the educational support and gather, tests between now and June. At that particular point, I know we've got some events coming up throughout the year that will be on the TACURE website. So I just encourage everyone to take advantage of the free DNA testing, because it is repair. It allows one of the first repair elements. I think that's really kind of cool. So thank you guys, and I will yield back to Dr. Trask. Thank you.
Thank you so much, LaKisha. So good to have you join us and be part of this with you. Emphasizing those important factors of the components of reparations and how this aligns in those ways with reparations, and is really critical as well. So how do we get involved? What do we do next here? And so, we all know the sayings, right? The strength in numbers and many hands make light work, right? So these are some of the things I think we can talk about doing. First of all, I just want to acknowledge again what Rep. Ammon said about this right of discovery. And I think it's key for us to try to create a culture that calls for the right of discovery. Talk about the idea of it's being a normative thing that African Americans, Black people should have the right to know who they are. And so that's the overall thing I think we all should be called to do, whether you're Black or an ally. We should all have that in our conversations. So one, I will say, understand the importance of identity and family. Sometimes when things have been stripped from us and been stripped from us for so long, you tend to not to think it is important any longer, or you take it for granted, and so on and so forth. And despite that stripping away of our connection and our identity, it's still important to be in touch with that and to understand that it is important still. That's one of the first keys and one of the first steps. Also, spread the word about this. This again is a historical, unique program that we hope that expands to go to do bigger and greater things. And so just talk about your conversations, whether you're an educator, talk about in your classrooms, and if you're out and having family reunions or whatever you are, to bring this kind of thing up is really fascinating information. And really important project that we hope that will grow in Illinois and grow nationwide. Also, understand about the process. I know, and Dr. Dave did a great job addressing this, but I know a lot of concern, a lot of questions come up about security and privacy and things of that nature. Dr. David did a great job explaining how secure and private this process is through this program. And it's important to acknowledge, how we say things and what we say and who we say it to and things of that nature. And so it's important when these conversations come up and you have the person like, oh, I don't trust that kind of stuff, which, I get it, because I want to have my DNA with a company that was going to give away to the FBI or something like that. But this is different. And so when we have this conversation, you say, hey, there's a program that won't do these things, won't give your information away, will protect it, and has a lot of safeguards to make sure that that's the case. So again, kind of understanding the process and in those conversations is important too. It's been mentioned a bit already, but we have events and we'll talk a little more later on about these, but we have events that can always use people's help, and just in terms of getting people being aware of the events in the first place, but also helping coordinate and helping doing some of the details with the events themselves. There's more information on the website about the specifics, but again, many hands make light work. So anybody could be involved and helping with these events. That'd be fantastic. I'll also say that locally in Champaign, we have our monthly meetings for our reparations group every third Thursday at 6:30. Dr. David is a regular attendee of those meetings. She provides an update about what's going on with the project at these meetings. Even if you can't make the meetings, we can get you on email lists. We send out minutes. We got our administrative person, Sarah Aris, on the line today. We can make sure all the information gets out to you. So if you did want to keep up with some of the updates with what Dr. David is doing, you can see it in those minutes each month as well. Last thing I'll say before we move on to our Q&A, we want to be conscious of to support future legislation and efforts towards this. I know there's a possibility and thoughts about forming a genealogical office with the state of Illinois, and maybe other states will decide to do the same. And keep in mind that this right to discovery is not limited to this program, right? We want to be able to expand it beyond this pilot study. You know, the definition of pilot study, right? Is a little initiated study that you start off with to do something bigger after the fact, right? So as bigger and better things come and expand, we want all the people we can to be supporting those efforts, support our rep, Carol Ammons and folks that are representing us at the state legislators and fighting for this and supporting them and pushing the envelope to help these bigger and better things to come about there. Some of the ways you can do that is through providing public comment. You know, with our state commission, every monthly state commission, we have a time where people can give public comment. You can give testimony there about the importance of this. We also have, I mentioned, public hearings across the state as well. You can go to those public hearings and give comment about this, talk about this, say how important it is to you, and be able to make sure that those entities are hearing that. So with all that said, I want to move forward. I'm sure there might be some decent number of questions to address, but we want to have our PhD student, Mackenzie Macon, kind of coordinate and facilitate our Q&A session now.
Thank you, Mr. Trask. So we have a couple of questions in the Q&A, and some has been answered as well if you take a look in the answer section. But we got a question asking, what can we gain of our African family and the societies we come from and the names? How do our status in the U.S. have precedence over our African identity? In other words, can we drop the names that descended from our time of enslavement and use our African names?
I would like to jump in, I guess, out of all fairness, you know, that part of the legislation or the potentials and possibility for reparations have not been decided upon. So I think that's something that should be brought to the table, and we could probably hash that out. So if we could take a note, Mackenzie, of that person's information and reach out if that's something they're interested in doing, then we can look into it and, you know, talk through it with the subject matter experts to see, you know, that being a potential. But you know, at this point, we're at the point of testing and reconnecting. So, you know, if you want to change your name at that particular point, I feel like that is your right, you know, to change your name if you want to, and, you know, because you can do that legally, you can change your name. But as a part of this program, I feel like that's not something that this program is suited to do at the current time.
Thank you, LaKisha. Also, they read once that citizenship of the last free parent before enslavement is a citizenship that belongs to descendant persons alive today. Does this DNA test have any relevance to our status today?
I'll answer part of that question, and then hopefully, if Representative Ammons is on the call, she can speak more definitively about the citizenship. But the part that I want to answer is the DNA status or dual citizenship. So there are programs or a few African nations that are considering offering the descendants of the enslaved Africans dual citizenship based off of DNA results. The latest one, I think it's about 5 now at the moment. And I think the latest one was Burkina Faso, where if you test with if you have any DNA evidence of having ancestors from Burkina Faso, then there's a certain process that you will have to go through, but offering dual citizenship. So I think we'll see more and more of that coming online. But Representative Emmons, can you speak more to that? Are you on the call here?
I'm still here. I've been
Okay.
so moved. I'm working, but I'm I'm still listening. But I think you said that the latest nation to come on board is Burkina Faso. Certainly, we are pleased. We have so much support in the international space. This is not just happening in Illinois. This is happening throughout the diaspora, including the West Indies and so on and so forth, that are seeking the opportunity without barriers for the right to return, which is one of the principles of the UN Declaration of Human Rights as repair, that we have the right to return. So genealogy tests like what is being done by Dr. David through the Takir Project, that is going to be absolutely necessary for whatever country you decide or you are connected to through your DNA testing, for you to seek the right to return. It is also being taken up by the African Union at this time through many of their organs, so that we can have a unified response for the entirety of the continent for the right to return for those who are in the diaspora. So there's much work going on the international level as well as on the national level here, so that African descendants can not only reconnect to their family through this kind of project, but also have the same rights as Europeans have to their right to return to their European ancestral homelands. And we are seeking the same thing. This project is just part of a larger effort that is taking place on our behalf. And I'll just say that one of the principal representatives for us in the international space is in Guinea-Bissau, and his work through the something called the Balanta Burissa Genealogy Society is a big word, founded in Illinois, actually, because he is from Illinois, but have found his return back to his homeland as well. And he has returned with his family. And he's using his scholarship. He's a graduate of Harvard. He's using his scholarship to fight for us on the international level for the right to return to whatever African nation that we belong to. And so this all will be cumulative work, but it is necessary work that we're doing in the international space as well. I do hope that answers the question that was posed. And let me just circle back to the first question. Anyone who seeks to change their name has the right to do so, as Dr. Latham said. We have not included in this provision any name change access points, but if we are successful by the work that is being presented today, if we are successful in our effort to reconnect us to our ancestral homeland in the way that Dr. Davis' work will do, then we will also turn around and hopefully establish an Office of Genealogy Affairs for Illinois that will help us do the next phase of this, which is to take away the cost that is associated with name changing that people who are descendants seek. So that is another part of legislative work that we would have to do, but it is a very good part of the legislative effort. We should not pay to repair our names, our family, and all of our connections.
Thank you, Rep. Evans. How can people get a copy of this video?
Well, definitely make sure that happens. If there is a way through Eventbrite, I can tag the link there, but I'll upload it to YouTube. So going through the website again, there'll be probably under the media link, a link for the YouTube video.
Will the events be held across the state of Illinois?
That's actually your question, Mackenzie. Mackenzie is managing our events overall, but maybe at this time, let's be fair and give it to LaKisha Latham there about the events.
Yes, they will be throughout the state of Illinois. I think we've identified maybe 5 major locations, including, I think it was East St. Louis, Chicago, Urbana-Champaign, and a couple of other ones, but those will be listed on the website. For when is our target to try to get these listed?
Oh, when the target date is listed on the website?
Yes.
Oh, when get the dates confirmed, because some of them have a rolling confirmation date.
The overall answer is yes, we will be going through the state of Illinois.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Mackenzie.
How can I get involved with this movement here in Chicago?
You can reach out to us. I'll put the contact information in the chat so that you can reach out to us either by email or by phone, or you could go to the website of chicagoreparations.org/HR453. That's chicagoreparations.org/HR453.
Why is this important? How does knowing where in Africa we come from going to enrich our lives? What retentions culturally from Africa do we still have in our African American culture? And is there any resources I can learn what we still have in common?
I'll address some of that. Okay, so let me go into where it says it here. Okay, before I answer this question, first I want to give a sort of a acknowledgement and shout out to a few other folks that's on this call. Definitely, in addition to CWCRC, there's in Cobra, Chicago branch, on the call, who have been, from what I understand, championing genetic genealogy for the longest. And then John Peter Brown, like I mentioned before, I'm from Ghana, is on the call right now. And then you have some genetic genealogy leaders on the call. We got some Samantha Morrison and Hassani. And I do want to make sure that I name my other advisor, Sade McNeil Smith, is on the call, who's really supporting this work. So do take a look at Dr. Smith's work too on storytelling and healing in communities, as well as stress in like interpersonal couple stress in African American couples and families. So I'm going to actually invite other people to also respond to this question, but that is also a personal question. But from the people that I talk with, from the people that I interview, there is as we mentioned before, identity development is a core developmental task, as we, across the lifespan. And understanding where you come from for some is a big part of that. And you can ask people who have been adopted or maybe have amnesia and things like that, that sense of sometimes loss when you don't have that information and seeking it out. And many people are, seeking this out. And it's just a part of our history, whatever that history would have been, whatever the ancestor history would have been. And in our case, it is Africa. So that is what would, help us to have an improved sense of well-being, to understand our histories and places in the story of humanity. And along with that is understanding more about African history as well. So much of it has not been taught in our US systems and even in African systems. So that is included in this, how does it enrich our lives, is about that identity development, learning about yourself, and you can do with it what you will. Some might want to change their names and some might not. I remember interviewing one person who said I was tested and I identified with Nigeria because my cousin was in Nigeria, and I identified as Ghanaian because my cousin was in Ghana. And then there are so many tests. I mean, so many relatives from all over the continent that after a while I was like, what do I say that I am? And then he came to say, well, I am African American. But this time, the African means so much. It's so much more informed. It's including of a rich history that he did not have before. So, I don't think anyone can really say what it can do for you, but we can, tell you the research of others who have gone through this experience that it does, have a psychological well-being, benefit to it. And so there's also a reason. Go ahead.
I just wanted to add a sentence to your well done explanation and your opinion. It is a personal decision, and what I'm about to say may not be true for anybody but me. But what it has done for me is made me recognize what she just said is they've called us African Americans, and therefore we are. But we had no connection to the African part. What does that mean? I'm African what? So the answer to the question has to be answered, in my opinion. And secondly, in this current moment in world history, Black people are being asked to come home again. His Imperial Majesty Haile Selassie in early 1930s, asked African Americans to join him in fighting an imperialistic government that was trying to take over Ethiopia and colonize it by Mussolini in Italy. And when African Americans who did answer the call, and several thousand of them did go to help in Ethiopia, which is why I believe Ethiopia is the only nation on the continent that was not colonized by the Europeans, because we saw our connection to the African struggle. What I have learned in my generation is that the one thing the Europeans in the West have always counted on is that Black people would remain loyal to the people who enslaved us, as opposed to identifying with the oppressed. And that is my reason for wanting to not just reconnect, but to identify properly with the people who belong to me, as opposed to the people who my ancestors belonged to. That is the reason why I'm doing this work. I hope others will find their reason as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I want to add to what Representative Aaron said. The other part of the question here: are there any resources to learn where we still have in common? And the resources are there. The research is out there about the African retentions, and so if you Google that phrase, African retentions, in foods, in some cultures, and in some areas they were able to retain more of the African cultures than in other areas. And Hassani, I will invite you to speak to that more if willing to speak quickly, a minute or two about some of that. If not, we can go ahead on to the next question. Oh, there we go, Hassani.
Sure. Well, it'd be less than a minute. It'd be less than 2 minutes. One resource is a book called Africanisms in American Culture. That is a great starter resource. The other resource is Africanisms and Gullah Dialect. Those are two very quick books that you can pick out and seek to understand what retentions that we have in still within American culture. The other one that I always recommend as well is called The Cooking Gene by Michael Twitty. That'll let you know more about the retentions within the culinary sector that we have. I don't know. I mean, it's important. I was the one that she referenced when she said that I said that I'm African American, and it actually means something. Now, after that word African American was first seen in print in 1782, and we've used it in various spaces since then. However, when I found my relatives across Africa, and LaKisha interviewed me, that African meant something. I was always connected because my family, just the way my family structured, I've always been connected to Africa in some way. But it personally meant something to me because now I knew exactly where my family came from, down to the actual families and villages, right? That my ancestors came from, and I can identify several lines connecting to particular families across Africa, um, in which I can say, hey, well, this ancestor came from this family in this village, right? And I can go back there, and I have gone back to Africa. My mother has gone back to Africa to visit some of our relatives from particular lines. So it's just a little bit about, you know.
Yes, do follow his work. He's found several living relatives across the continent, as he said. So, you know, wealth of just I don't know, experiences there as you would reach out to him.
Is this project specifically geared toward the African American population, or will it also assist genealogy for other nationalities as well?
Jeff, can you take that question?
Yeah. Currently, the focus for Takir is to obviously, just to name the program African Kinship Reunion, is to start off and focus on African Americans, Black people. However, this application could be expanded in different ways in the future, but the focus for this particular program is for Africans and for Black people rather. And so um, there definitely are important aspects of this for other groups of people as well. But as I tell people when I do reparations work, I believe many groups deserve reparations and have gotten reparations, and anybody who's been disenfranchised or discriminated against or whatever should get reparations. I only have time for Black folks. Personally, because there's so much with that alone. But I do believe there may be some future implications with other groups as we move along. But for right now, this particular project is definitely focused on African Americans.
How can those of us outside of Illinois help with this project?
LaKisha, can you answer that one? This is more about the awareness, right?
Absolutely. So taking to social media is a good way to help us to get awareness and to foster more participation here in the state. I know, like nationally, Dr. David's work has been promoted for adoption. So we may be venturing nationally later, but right now, just telling family members, sharing your church, your pastors, but that social media element, I find that's the quickest way and the best way right now for us to gain the awareness of what's being done in Illinois.
And you could also plant seeds wherever you are, whatever state,
Yes.
community, municipality you're in, start planting the seeds for something like this to be a priority in that area as well. You know, what happened with the state of Illinois didn't happen magically. It took all the efforts of Dr. David and Representative Admins and a bunch of other people to make that happen. So starting that path in your locale will be great. And thankfully, there's a model that exists here already, right? So you don't have to reinvent, the wheel. You don't have to come up with things on your own, so we can definitely be supportive of any efforts outside the state of Illinois with that.
Yeah, and I'll just piggyback off of that, Jeff, since we kind of opened up the door there. There are local reparation commissions, coalitions that may actually be in your state. So I would find out, and then you would be able to take Jeff's advisement for planting that seed that we speak about to have this type of program there as well.
Is there a way to tell what language words that was passed down came from? I don't want to butcher this, but Iyaki and okay, you
I
see
got
it.
it. Yes, I see it. Yeah, so there's a lot of conversations that we can have about, beyond, this program in this moment. So I would want to defer, like in maybe some of our community events, we could talk more about, sort of the meanings and all the various stories. But I will say, quickly that just like in Ghana alone, there's over 30, 40 different languages just in Ghana. And I know I'm saying this is probably more than even what I'm saying. So that it takes a lot of work to, to try to track down what particular word, you have your dialects, you have your various cultures. And probably again, like with the DNA testing, especially if it's a particular family phrase, that can probably help to pinpoint at least among what set of African family groups should you, investigate this word. But that is beyond, what we have time and capacity for right now. I appreciate the question though.
When a person is related to a particular type of individuals, say for instance, stock breeder from the enslavement time, what would it take in DNA info to identify all the offspring that was begat from slave stock breeding?
Yeah, so there was a pretty straightforward, answer to this until you see the word all, ALL, right? This is, finding descendants, finding relatives, regardless of the context. It is about the more people who are in the same database, the better the results are going to be. So as you're spreading the word, more people joining, like for instance, the Takir database, then the more we're able to identify those relatives. There is a small statistic that I will say, and that is when there was a project that was done, I believe it was in the UK, and a researcher found out that if he tested 2% of the UK population, then any random person from the UK will find at least a third cousin in a group that he tested. So any random person will find at least a third cousin by testing 2% of that population. I don't know what that will look like for the US. I don't know what that looked like for just African populations as our focus is on. But I will say that once we start to identify some of the relatives, that would help us to identify more of the relatives. Will we be able to identify all? All might not test. So are in all families that was, victimized by that may not have tested. So can't really say all in that sense. But there is a case where I think I am seeing this very thing, and the number of descendants, the number of family lines is not a typical, set of descendants, even for the history of family separations during the slave era in the U.S. The DNA is how you're going to be able to do that, as you noted. The more people who test, the better the results will be.
I believe that is almost all the questions in the Q&A. Just a clarifying question. I believe this was answered before, but seeing if testing can assist in getting dual citizenship in Africa. I think we had duplicated questions.
Yeah, we'll count that as a duplicate. Shelley, I think. Did you have another follow-up question to that?
I didn't. I had asked that question in the very beginning, and then on your slides, I saw that dual citizenship could potentially be a part, depending on what other countries have decided to assist us in that.
Okay.
Other questions? Right. We'll move on to closing remarks and next steps. First of all, thank you everyone for attending, having your Saturday mornings with us for this historical moment. I would like to recap a few things and mention a few things. One, there is a film called Bound, Africans versus African Americans as a screening discussion event, June 14th. It's gonna be from 5 to 8:30 or 4:30 to 9, include our getting ready for it and have a discussion afterwards. Did we confirm if that's gonna be the Natural History Building or Gregory Hall yet? We're still waiting to get that confirmed. So
Yeah,
looking
the
that up.
confirmation for that is today.
Okay, excellent. We also want to have an event to share stories of results on June 21st. And so we'll put information on the website for that. We'll keep that posted. We'll look forward to hearing the stories as people connect with their family, hear more stories like Champaign County Clerk Aaron Ammons shared. And I would like to also mention briefly that uh, this idea that Black people will side with our oppressors versus the oppressed is a very real thing we have to address and deal with because there's a intentional, purposeful socialization that takes place in this country, where and the reason I'm bringing this up because it's film Bound. I watched it, and it just speaks so much to the misperceptions and conceived notions that have been formed both for African Americans and for Africans. And I was thinking about when I was a kid watching this movie Shaka Zulu, and it's basically about a British garrison in Africa that's basically there to, up to no good, really. But the framework and the understanding is that you're rooting for the British soldiers to win the battle and defeat Shaka Zulu and his warriors in when they're the ones in Africa. And these kind of things. And I grew up in a household that's very conscious about, Black culture, Black heroes, and so on and so forth. But just the socialization in this country is so sometimes invisible that we don't even notice some of the things that we believe and why we believe it and the notions that we have. So I just encourage all of us to be as learned as we can on these issues because there's a lot of things that messaging this country has that is causing disruption in our country here. Um, Also, just want to recap some action items. Join the wait list. Oh, I did want to ask Dr. David. I know at one point where there's an age preference a bit. Is that still the case?
Yeah, so we will prioritize the older generation. Anyone 18 or older, qualifies. But if it's a choice between two, the older we'll prioritize the older person.
Gotcha. So anybody can jump on there. Just want to make people aware of that. And also, so join the wait list, create an account, take the test, view the results, and share your story. We would love to build a repository of stories. This could be information, again, that can go to enhance and expand our efforts here in Illinois and enhance efforts across the country and even internationally. So we want to build a strong base and foundation of these stories that take place once people are finding their roots and getting more in touch with their family. And then also just in general, let's keep emphasizing this idea of the right of discovery, being able to reconnect with who we are, and just again in our conversations, in our environments, in our social circles. Let's put this in our conversations and have this in our discussions. With that said, I want to make sure I don't forget anything. Dr. David, LaKisha, anybody else?
Right.
Is there anything else that we need to cover before we
Y-
close here?
Yeah, give a shout out to Cam Howard on
Is he on there?
on the group. Yep. I want to miss
Awesome.
him. Terry Barnes, I see you. Thank y'all for joining. Yep.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm just reminded how much this is a family effort among each other, right? Being able to see each other, different venues, different events, different contexts. We're all in this together. And so it's just something to keep in mind that we are our family. And so thank you once again, everyone. Thank you so much, Dr. David, for leading this work. You're amazing, and we're so excited to see what will come from these efforts. Have a good rest of your weekend, everyone.
All right, thank you. Great presentation.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.